Hey everybody, welcome to So I've Been Told. My name is Adam Kramer and I am your host. It is January 25th. Some of you that are listening in Pennsylvania might still be covered in snow. We got some snow here in Rochester, but we didn't really get hit by Winter Storm Jonas the way that you all did. I was up last night watching the Royal Rumble. I've got a lot of things I could say about that, but this isn't a wrestling podcast. But you know what is a wrestling podcast? Shows from a Hat. And that show is on our wonderful podcast network, the Podcast of Pennsylvania. It is a show hosted by Chris Decker, who runs our podcast network. Hey Chris, somebody I'd like to have on the show to talk about his musical history and all that, and just about podcasting in general. But we'll make it happen. We're on the same network. It's not going to be too hard. But yeah, check out Shows from a Hat. It's on our Podbean page, obviously, and also on iTunes in the Podcast of Pennsylvania feed. Now, the person we're going to talk to today is John W. Kiss III, JK3. He is one of my very best friends. We played in a band together. We lived together. So we booked a lot of house shows together. Just a really good, fun, interesting, weird dude. And he's also a wrestling fan. Just bringing it back around. But we don't talk about that at all in this episode. We just talk about music and booking house shows. And it's a really super fun interview. So I hope you guys all enjoy it. I'll talk to you again at the end of the interview. But yeah, enjoy my conversation with John W. Kiss III.
I'm glad to be on the show.
Yeah. So, I just interviewed Blendy, and he's
all right.
He's around. He just stepped outside to smoke. So he'll be saying hi in a little bit, and he said he's gonna try and not talk too much to let us focus on the interview.
All right.
But yeah, let's get into it. How did you what was your introduction to sort of punk or underground music, and how old were you, and where did that all begin for you?
Oh, geez. Let me think. I was probably about, however old you are in middle school, that's probably about when I first started listening to or getting into punk rock. I didn't know too much about it. Before that, I was very into rap and hip hop at a very young age, and then I just somehow stumbled across some punk music. And there was a friend of mine in middle school that had asked me about what kind of music I liked, and I told him I liked punk, and he was like, yeah, and he started listing off a bunch of names of bands that I never heard of. So I looked into those. Some of those were like Dropkick Murphys and Minor Threat and stuff like that. And I looked into all those bands and was just like, yeah, no, this is actually exactly what I love. And just from there started expanding on that kind of style.
Cool. So before that friend introduced you to those bands you mentioned, Minor Threat, Dropkick Murphys, which there's a lot in between those bands. It's kind of funny that those are the two bands. But what were the bands that you knew before that point?
Before he introduced me to those bands, I didn't. Again, I was really young, so my I guess interpretation of punk was just what I read about. So all I knew really was Sex Pistols and Ramones. And a lot of those classic first wave punk bands. That was kind of what I guess essentially introduced me as a punk. And then, like I said, that friend of mine, I can't remember his name. It was so long ago, but that friend of mine, listed off a bunch of other bands that just created this whole big ricochet of looking into all the different subgenres of punk.
Cool. Now, what's how were you I know you said reading. Where were you reading about the Sex Pistols and the Ramones in middle school?
Oh man, in middle school that would have been some of the earlier stages of the internet.
Word.
I'm pretty sure it was still dial-up internet then, at least at my house.
I believe it.
What's up?
I said I believe it. Where I'm from, I didn't get internet until I was like a senior in high school.
Hi, John.
Well, no, I guess it was a little earlier. Hey. Glendy's here.
Hey.
How you doing, Bernie?
Oh, very good, Bernie. Thank you.
But yeah, I didn't get dial-up internet until I was in high school, but I guess you were probably a little bit ahead of the curve there on Long Island.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because, it's hard to place exactly what year middle school was.
Yeah.
But I know that it was definitely through the internet, whether it be at home or like even at the school library. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how did you first get involved in the scene? What were the first shows you went to, and how did you get involved in actually playing and being in the scene?
That's a good question, because I kind of got, I guess for most people, I kind of got a late start into diving into my own music and playing live shows and stuff like that. When I lived on Long Island still, was in high school still, I wasn't involved in the music scene there at all, in any of the music scenes. There was one friend of mine that I had that was in a punk band and invited me to a show, and I went and had a good time, but it was like a super underground show, and it was a lot of shitty bands.
Yeah, you don't remember the names of any of them?
I don't remember any of the names, and none of them were known bands. They were all just a bunch of punks that were making really shitty music, but it was a lot of fun. Cool. But even then, I didn't really catch on to it until I went to college. And as you know, when I went to college, that's when I met Stephen Haramis and Ward Yurden, and we all decided to start The Where, which is also a shitty band, but was a lot of fun. And even then, we still weren't really a big part of the music scene, probably until later, maybe a year later, being a band, because then that's when we started to play a couple of shows here and there, actually in Rochester, New York. We played a bunch of shows at Roberts Wesleyan College, but it wasn't until maybe a year being in the band that we started to play a couple of shows here and there in Rochester.
Okay. Now I know. Well, let me back it up a little bit. I've heard and seen some video of a band before The Where. So what do you have to say about that?
You're talking about Orange Saturday. Yeah, I'm surprised I skipped that. Oh, man. Orange Saturday was a band that I was in right before I went to college. It was, I guess, just like a contemporary rock band, a contemporary Christian rock band. And we only played, I want to say, 3 or 4 shows. One of them was a high school battle of the bands. The other 2 were at 2 different churches.
Did you win the battle of the bands?
No, the battle of the bands was at a high school. I forget what high school, but it was at a high school on Long Island, not the one that I went to. And then the other 2 or 3 shows were at a Lutheran church for like a youth group thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell me about The Where. What were you guys about? What did you sound like, for anybody who doesn't know? And just tell about that, because that band has reached an almost legendary status among certain people. Notorious,
I know,
if you will.
I know, it's funny. Let's see, The Where. I think the best way to describe it, I'm pretty sure it was Robbie Alexander who said this. The Where was the best, worst thing ever.
I still have the only copy of the DVD.
Well, there are a couple of those around, and I think there's actually...
Oh, there are a few?
Yeah, there's a couple around, and that's actually on YouTube now, which if that's okay with you, I'll link the YouTube video to the
Definitely, you could
podcast.
definitely link
I
it
don't
if you
feel
want.
so special anymore. I thought I was the only one.
So you guys met in college and started to play, and kind of booked a lot of shows on your own there at Roberts.
Yeah.
And that's I want to talk about that because to me I think there is something really cool and really like punk rock about you just started booking shows because other people wouldn't book you, and kind of had a little bit of a scene there. So can you tell me about that scene that you guys developed there on that campus?
Yeah. Well, as I said before, the where was the best worst thing in the sense that it was kind of started on a concept and an idea. Our friend Ward Yurden and I, we were always joking about how in heavier music, more so like hardcore and metal, you could never understand the lyrics unless you like actually sat there and read the booklet or whatever. So we were like, what if we started a band that had absolutely no lyrics whatsoever, and we just screamed random things? And that's pretty much how the Where started. And Stephen Haramis heard that we wanted to start the band, and he decided to come and talk with us about it. At the time, Steve was doing his piano stuff, so Ward and I were like, you wouldn't fit in with this. What are you talking about? But then he let us listen to a band he was in with his cousin called the Marion Crane, where he did vocals for, and we actually didn't believe it was him because it was just a lot of screaming, and we were like, that's not you. And he's like, no, it is, I swear. And that's kind of how it started, and we just did noise with a little bit of music, if you will. And like you said, there were people that weren't booking us, so we started booking ourselves. We kind of inserted ourselves on campus. There was a lot of people on the Roberts campus that hated us just because of our music. They didn't like us. Which when we first started doing what we were doing, we knew that there were people that weren't going to enjoy the music, but we didn't know that it would go so far as for those people to deeply hate us with a passion as people. It was very odd for us in that sense. But yeah, we started booking shows there. We became friends with a couple of people that were in the Rochester punk scene, namely Trevor Lake and Sarah from Oonful-of-Vicodi. We became friends with those two people in particular, and some of the guys from Free For All, and we just started booking shows at Roberts on campus and created our own little punk scene at Roberts Wesleyan. It lasted very short because the college caught on to this probably, I want to say, 4 or 5 shows into it. They caught on to it and kind of made it impossible for us to keep booking shows. They told us that we needed to be music students to book shows. That was their excuse. So it was very short-lived, but when it was running, I want to say around the second or third show that we booked, it was starting to get some notoriety. There were a couple of people there. There was good bands playing. Defects, which is now Flip Shit. Like I said, Free For All was there. I'm pretty sure Radioactive Snowshoe played. Condition Oakland played. There was a couple of bands that some exist still and some don't. Antithesis played there. I know they don't exist anymore.
That band was amazing.
They were.
I just found their MySpace page recently.
Yes.
And I think I'm gonna play an Antithesis song on the podcast because they're
Oh, you should.
They're good enough that people should know about them. guys did you played a lot of shows as the Where. Can you tell me about, and a lot of shows in Pennsylvania where I was living, can you tell me a little bit about, talk a little bit about the connection between that scene and the scene you guys were kind of running at Roberts, and later on doing some shows at the Flying Squirrel and other things here in Rochester. Just talk about the connection.
Well, that's how you and I met, is through the Where, through Steve. Mm-hmm. You were playing in Red Eyes for Blue Skies, and the Where came and played a show with you guys, and I believe that was the show that was supposed to happen, but then turned out to be a Sweet 16, and we all played anyway. And then the place that we were playing happened to also be the courthouse, so the cops came downstairs and told the Where to stop playing because it was disturbing the court, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, well, we had I talked about that on the new Loaded Words episode that I'm on.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that was a pretty ridiculous story. And actually, I think I may have met you before that. I think I booked you guys at the Donald Hyder Center, and Without Question played or something like that, and you guys all like camped out.
Oh, you're right.
You guys camped out in my grandparents' backyard.
That's true. You're right about that. That is. Well, then I guess that's kind of where it all started. Then that's where not only did we first meet, but that's where the Pennsylvania and Rochester connection started. Is probably there because Steve knew you and a bunch of bands from Pennsylvania, and you and Steve had your Something Better Records label, and you guys were doing show trades basically between the Where and other PA bands, and
yeah.
We, and then we started asking some Pennsylvania bands to come up and play at the college, and I remember one band in particular that we consistently wanted to play in Rochester was Beer and Pretzels, and for some reason, every time we booked them, there was always some reason, like someone got into an accident or somebody's in the hospital. There was always some reason why they couldn't, or they had to cancel the show.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And they're still a band.
That's insane.
I'm hoping that I know that Jay and Dan know Chad a little bit better than I do, and they've talked about doing an interview with Loaded Words, and I'm really excited to hear that, because that band's been together for well over a decade at this point, so they've got some serious history.
Yeah, for sure, they got some stories to tell.
Yeah, and that's where you guys met Condition Oakland and Tyler, and I guess Already Gone played up here before Condition Oakland was
before Condition Oakland, yeah. Already Gone was my first introduction to Tyler Troutman, which, now Tyler Troutman's one of my best friends, as you guys are, and every time I get a chance to see him play or maybe even book him, I try to do as best as I can, and we love hanging out with each other.
Word. Now, what came next after the Where?
Well, as you know, but not everyone knows,
Yeah, I know all your stories.
Talk about Vomitous Society.
We'll get there.
There's still some in between before Vomitous Society. That's what I was getting at. Steve and I were roommates in college, and we would get bored at college because Robert sucks. Anybody who listens to this and is thinking about going to Roberts Wesleyan College, don't do it. It's a shitty college. They'll scam you out of your money. Anyway, to continue, we were bored on campus all the time, and we were like, oh, what do you want to do? So we would just record music. We would record stupid shit. We would record serious shit. We would just record all the time, and that spawned a bunch of different projects. Some good, some bad, some dumb. I don't know. There was a bunch of stuff, but the realistic project after the Wear was the Dignitaries, which was it was an anarcho Christian hardcore punk band. It was very short lived, and it was interesting because that was a band that Steve and I actually played at a rockcore house show. I think it was on a show with Oonful-of-Vicodi, so it was really interesting to play for a crowd of a bunch of atheists, pissed off punks, and we're sitting there doing a cover of This Little Light of Mine. You know, a lot of people hated it.
Yeah, what house was that at? What do you?
Let me think now. It's one that doesn't exist anymore. The Vermin Lair. That's what it was.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Hayward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That house came up in the interview with Sir Glendy as well.
Oh, of course, yeah, of course. I didn't know Glendy at the time, but the first time I ever saw Glendy was at the Meow House.
No, man.
What?
That's not when you first saw me.
When was it?
Monroe Avenue. Me and a member of Infernal Abyss, Jared, we were walking down Monroe Avenue, and you pulled up in a really terrifying vehicle, and you handed us a flyer on Monroe Ave where Texas Blues Barbecue is now. That's when that's when I first saw you ever, dude.
Okay. All right, there you go.
2009.
That's hilarious.
It is.
So the Dignitaries, you guys played some shows. What happened with that band?
It just kind of died out. Steve and I were, I don't know, we were just trying to see. The Dignitaries was just Steve and I, and we wanted to do something that was more than just a two-piece. So I think after a little while, we just fizzled out of the Dignitaries, and we're like, we need to try to do something else. And on top of that, I think we both were realizing that a lot of the Christian stuff that were in the lyrics of that band, we weren't really aligned with it anymore. So I think that's a big reason too. Is we were both kind of going through a whole, hey, I'm not really a Christian anymore. I don't know if I should play Christian music. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me personally, I think it was a thing where I still didn't realize that I wasn't a Christian yet. You know what I mean? I still thought I was a Christian, but looking back at it, I can see that I definitely wasn't anymore. And that's why we kind of went a different way. And I think that's what kind of segues into Vomitous Society. But right before Vomitous Society, we were, actually I should say simultaneously with Vomitous Society, we were in a very, very, very short-lived band, ska band called Baba Ganoush.
Yeah, because I remember I had booked you guys, and it was on the same show. And did Baba Ganoush ever have anything recorded, any videos, or I don't know if I ever saw or heard anything.
No, we had nothing. All we had was maybe I think 4 songs, and that show that we played in Bloomsburg is the only show we ever played.
Weird.
I know. Well, there was this guy. I couldn't even tell you how we knew him, but there was this guy named Gabe that was in the band, and he was just a very weird guy. And I mean, we're weird too, but he was weird in a different way, and he just didn't. I really think he couldn't take all the swearing. To be honest, he was like a very Christian person, and I don't think he could take all the swearing that we said.
So that was the only time you guys played, was that one show, not even in your hometown. So that's pretty funny.
That is very funny.
Now tell me about Vomitous Society. I mean, it's not a band that gets talked about a lot for a lot of reasons, but how did that get started, and just what was that band? What did you sound like? And go into as much detail as you want about that band.
Well, basically, as I said before with the Dignitaries, Steve and I were like, we want to do something that's not two-piece. We want to do something new. Let's get away from these Christian-themed lyrics. Let's do something a little bit deeper in lyrical content, maybe a little bit more political. And that's kind of how Vomitous Society started. Ironically, it started out as just a two-piece, because it was just me and Steve again. He was playing drums, I was playing guitar, and we went into our friend's basement and just jammed a little bit. And we were jamming on some really cool, like power violent sounding music. It sounded really cool, and we were really happy with what we were coming up with. And we were thinking to ourselves, we need a vocalist and a bassist. We happened to know this guy at Roberts Wesleyan College, Ryan Jeffrey. And so we asked him if he wanted to do vocals. I don't know what possessed us to ask him. Like, we didn't know if he knew how to...
Oh, I think I lost you.
Hello.
I lost you. Anyway, we're back.
Hey. Lost you there. Yeah. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, so we got Ryan Jeffrey, and I don't know how to explain it. He wasn't the greatest of people. He would call people out at shows, and he would just act like a bro, which was weird because he wasn't a bro, but he would act like a bro. It was weird. He would call people assholes and cunts and stuff like that. So that's why Vomitous Society was very short-lived. And on top of that, he wasn't even that good of a vocalist. So, Steve and I were just like, yeah, we're done with this. It was a very hostile band, too. The fact that we would get really mad at Ryan. I remember the last show that we had with Vomitous Society, like, we got into a huge fight. It was at Tyler's old house.
Greenleaf.
Yeah, the Greenleaf. We got into, like, a really huge fight, and I just, like, blew up on Ryan, and after that, it was done. We played the show, and we're like, we're done with this shit. And we were done.
Yeah, I remember, like, Steve, like, wrecked his drum kit afterwards, and his snare broke, and he, like, I think he put fireworks inside of it or something like that on the street outside of Tyler's house.
Yeah, that was fun to watch.
All right, so that was the end of Vomitous Society, and then right after that ended, I moved to Rochester, and tell me about Endangered Youth, which, I mean, I know all about it, and most of the listenership probably knows a fair amount, but
I do.
I want to get your take on how that all started. And
oh man, there's so much. Endangered Youth. It was talked about for a long time before it became a thing. Mm-hmm. Before you moved to Rochester, you and Steve were talking about the possibility of being in a band and all this stuff, and you had the name of it, Endangered Youth, and I was like, that's a cool name, and we were all really excited when you moved, because we were like, oh, we could start Endangered Youth, this could be awesome, and you moved in with me. We moved into the Meat Grinder, or what would later become the Meat Grinder, I guess, and I remember at art night, the first time Steve wanted to teach me some of the songs for Endangered Youth. I'm sure you remember this as well. Mm-hmm. It was like the simplest song ever. The simplest song. And he's showing me on guitar. He's like, this is how you play it. And then I was like trying to play it, and I was like, I can't do it. I'm not playing bass. Fuck this. I can't do it. This is shitty. I'll never be able to do it. And Steve was just like, John, this is really simple. You could do this. Don't worry about it. And then it's just funny to think of how that was like a really simple song. It was We're Not Getting Any Younger. It was that song. Really simple song, and you know, through the years I was able to get way better at bass and play a much harder song that band created, and that other bands ever after that have created.
Yeah.
So it was just funny to think that I thought I could never play such a simple song.
Now, before we met Josh Richards, who would become he was the first guitarist of that band, we had some adventures with trying out some people on guitar. And I don't think that's any of these stories have been told on, my interview with Loaded Words or, any of the other interviews. We touched on it a little bit with Joey.
Yeah, I was going to say, did Ryan's own, wanna...
Yeah.
Didn't he, show up one day or something?
Yeah, but you can, if you want to tell some of those stories, that stuff hasn't been shared yet.
Yeah, I just remember specifically a guy from RIT. I don't even remember what the guy's actual name was, but he called himself D Flips.
Shout out to D
I don't
Flips.
even know. D Flips, I love you, man, wherever you are. He replied to the Craigslist ad that Steve had made, and he was like, "Yeah, I wanna see what you guys are like, this, that, and the other thing." So we went over to RIT, to his dorm room, and he had, if I remember correctly, he had like a keyboard and kind of like this cool little like music setup in his dorm for him to be able to like record his own music. And I remember he was asking us questions like, "Oh, so what kind of music you playing, and what are some of the songs, and this and that." And we were telling him straight up, like, hardcore band. Here's some of our songs. I remember Steve playing him a couple of riffs of our songs, and the kid was just like, you really got to be prepared. You got to play covers so that you could get better at playing music, and you got to do all this stuff. And I'm D Flips, and I play music and record music, and I'm really good, and you got to play covers. I mean, that's basically all I remember about the guy.
D Flips chasing that paper.
Hashtag
and we
D Flips
just,
forever.
I just remember we automatically, we kind of all gave each other that look. We left and got in the car and we're like, yeah, no.
So yeah, tell me about kind of the rest of the story of Endangered Youth. Like I said, I've already kind of shared my perspective on the Loaded Words interview. So I just kind of want to hear your version of the story and kind of the story of Endangered Youth and the Meat Grinder, because they're kind of, hand in hand throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, Endangered Youth was a very dysfunctional band, if you will. As far as music and practicing goes, we were very organized in that sense. But as far as like interpersonal band relationships, we were very disgruntled towards each other at times. Someone, maybe Steve would be pissed off at Eric, or I would be pissed off at Adam, or Adam would be pissed off at Steve. There was never really a time where we were all kind of peaceful towards each other. There was always some sort of bickering somewhere, and that kind of took its toll on the band and personal friendships within the band. So we had our, if you will, our first run, and then we broke up, and we were legitimately broken up. I remember the first time that Endangered Youth broke up, I was sad by it, because I personally thought that band had the potential to, be a full-time, let's go tour, let's do this, let's do that, let's quit our day jobs eventually kind of a band. So I was very sad by it when it first broke up. Mm-hmm. And, whatever, it happens. I guess to back up a little bit, I should talk a little bit about the Meat Grinder, too.
And also tell the listeners about the releases that we put out as Endangered Youth.
Well, we had a two demos that we made, in a sense. We had a Stand Your Ground EP that we just made ourselves, and it only had 3 songs on it, and we burned somewhere around like 500 copies of them, and we just passed them all around Rochester. Pretty sure we probably even gave a couple out to people in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So those were floating around for a little while because we made so many of them. And around the same time that we made that EP demo thing, we had recorded two songs technically we recorded 3 songs for the Pirates EP split with Condition Oakland and Kaleidoscopes, but only 2 of them made it on the EP/split, and I don't know how many of those were made. But yeah, I think we were selling those for like $1 or something like that. Mm. And so those were our like early demo releases, and then we started working on the Furtherance album. It was exciting because it was the first time doing an album. See, I had made a lot of music with Steve, but we never were able to record live drumming. So when Endangered Youth started working on Furtherance, it was the first time that we had an actual like professional recording guy come and do recording for us. We didn't go to the studio that he worked at. We went to his house, his own home studio, but it was still exciting because it was the first time that we had real drums in a recording. It was the first time that that we got the experience of real studio recording, you know. Mm-hmm. And that was released in February
of 2012.
When was that released? What?
February of 2012.
There you go, February of 2012. So that's 4 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, that project took a lot of time, and there are still some things about it that some of us dislike and like, you know, but it's still what it is, and it's still amazing to think about the energy and time that was put into it and the end product that came out.
Yeah, personally, I'm super proud of what we made with that record, and if you're interested, you can find that on Bandcamp. It's a free download. Saying this for the listeners, not for you, John, because I know you already know this. But yeah, we did that. Now, what happened? Yeah, you can back it up and talk about the meat grinder, and then we'll talk about the reforming and beyond.
Yeah. And Chica and the Wolves.
Yeah.
Hey.
Thank you, Birdie.
Thank you, Bird.
So the meat grinder, the meat grinder had its eras, if you will, because we had Josh Richards was playing guitar for Endangered Youth, but he was also living with us at the meat grinder for a short period of time. And Endangered Youth did band practice in the meat grinder basement. I just remember when we first went and ventured into the basement at that apartment. We ventured into the basement and we saw there was just shit everywhere. Just a bunch of garbage all over the place. There was bikes left over from past residents. There was a fucking couch down there that was nasty and dirty. There were a bunch of hip-hop records that we thought were potentially left by some homeless guy. I don't even know. I remember we took those hip-hop records and we kept them for ourselves. We took that couch and we just destroyed it and threw it in a smaller room, the destroyed version of it. And then I think it was Adam. I know Steve was with us, I think. But I think it was Adam who was like, this would be a really cool place to throw shows. That would be really cool. And we were just like, hell yeah, that would be cool. So that's kind of where that idea came from. And then we just kind of went with it and started throwing shows there.
And there were a lot of shows.
Excuse me?
There were a lot of shows.
There was definitely, sometimes there were a lot more shows than there should have even been.
Yeah.
Like those times when we didn't communicate with each other and there was like 3 shows in 1 week, and our neighbors were like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
With band practice on top of that.
Yeah, with also bands practicing, and
Yeah, exactly.
that wasn't you and I. The communication issue was, for the record.
It was me.
Yeah, some of it was Glenn D. Some of it was another person that lived there. But yeah, there was a lot of activity in that basement.
Yeah, the apartment in general. I know that you've talked about this in your other episode, I think, with Joey and Avery. But a lot of people that came to the shows at the Meat Grinder, some of the like regular people, would come and hang out at the apartment on days that we didn't have shows and just hang out, and it was always fun. But sometimes it would get a little rowdy,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was fun to be a part of and be a creative person in a community of people that was involved in art and music. It was nice to see the people that came. It was nice to share ideas with the people that came. It was nice to listen to the bands that went through. It was nice to see a Josh Strauss show featuring his friends.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Strauss and friends.
It was. It was a good time, but it was equally a bad time. You know what I mean? Because it started to go downhill, but at the same time, a lot of people involved, including myself, we were young adults, so we were going through those weird positions in life where we were just pissed off at the world and depressed all the time,
Mm-hmm.
So it was an interesting way to cope with growing up and learning how to be responsible and paying bills and paying rent.
Yeah. Now
and holding relationships together too, not even romantic relationships, just friendships and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we move on from the Meat Grinder conversation, on a positive note, let's what were some of your favorite shows that happened there, and or just favorite, things that happened there in general?
The good times and the bad times, I love it all. I really do, because I learned a lot from just everything that happened there. I'm so surprised that we got away with the shit that we got away with there, man. It was insane, some of the shit that went on at that house. One of my favorite shows was actually the Colin Bourne show. I'm pretty sure that was he booked a couple of different bands, and I remember that was the first show that I saw with Such Reckless Children, I believe. And I remember we didn't really know too much about Colin. We just knew he was this eccentric dude. And I remember seeing Such Reckless Children play and watching Colin play drums, and I was just like, holy shit, this dude is fucking awesome at drums. What the hell? You would never expect it,
Yeah,
it was cool.
Such Reckless Children had a big part in all the fun we had there, unbeknownst to us at the time. But
Yeah. One of my other, I'm trying to think of some of the other shows that went on there, or even just things.
the big kicker for Meat Grinder was definitely the Mischief Brew show.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure. That's what made people know what the Meat Grinder was, basically.
Exactly. Put it on the map, if you will. That was actually the first time I personally, before I moved in, it's my first experience. So that was really fun. That, like I said, definitely put it on a map.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when we were asked if we could host that show, or whatever you want to call it. We made a Facebook event for it, and there was somewhere around 100 or so people that said they were coming to the show, and we were like, it's just Facebook. No, that's not a real representation of how many people are going to come to a show. And then the show came, and there was a fucking line out the door down the fucking street. We were like, what the fuck is going on over here?
From Buffalo and even Syracuse and Ithaca were even present.
And that was
What's up?
And that was really Casey Sanders doing. He put that show together and promoted it, and he's somebody that is on the short list of people that I like definitely need to have on the show soon, and we've talked about it. It's going to happen sometime soon.
I agree.
Yeah. So let's pick up at the end of the Meat Grinder, the end of Endangered Youth, and what happened from that point on in your life musically.
Well, wait, I was just thinking of a Meat Grinder story.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, keep going.
Come on, lay it on.
All right. So I remember. I'm gonna get down and dirty now. I'm gonna tell you guys some of my dirty secrets. Well, you guys know them, but the listeners might not.
Is it confessions
I'm
time,
trying
Johnny?
Yeah, confessions here.
It's funny. I know you listened to the episode with Dan Kushner. He was telling me that he felt very confessional while I interviewed him as well. So
It's true. It's true. You're just that type of person.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah. I remember this one part of living at the Meat Grinder, and there was like this party going on at the Meat Grinder, and I can't remember if it was either when Glendy was still living there or like right after he had moved out. I really can't remember. But I was in the basement, and I was huffing spray paint.
Yeah, I was still there.
Okay. I was in the basement, and I was being a dumbass, and I was huffing spray paint. Don't ever fucking do that shit. That's fucking dumb. You feel like the fucking scum of the earth when you do that kind of shit.
Because you
so
are.
I was huffing spray paint. And Josh Strauss was kind of in the background of the basement and saw me doing this, and I just noticed that he was looking at me oddly. So I turned around and I was like, "I'm sorry, man. I'm just going through a thing." And then he's like, "No, it's all good." And he came over and joined me.
Oh, jeez.
And then we went back upstairs, and there was someone in Adam's room who was on the phone with Josh's girlfriend at the time.
Oh no! This was my birthday party, wasn't it?
Something, I don't know what it was.
It was his birthday. I had left for the night, and things got weird.
Yeah, Adam wasn't there, and so someone was in Adam's room on the phone with Joshua Strauss's girlfriend at the time, and she was just on the phone, pants down.
Is this the Hey Bonk Slave? Is this Hey Bonk Slave?
Yeah.
Come here.
And Josh is filming this, and he's just like, "I think she's having phone sex with my girlfriend." And I was just like, "Okay." And I was like, like fucked up from huffing spray paint, so I just walked out. And then I noticed people in the living room were about to like smoke a bowl of weed. So in my like still crazy like altered state, I was like, "Hey, you can't smoke this in here." And then right after I said that, I proceeded to light up the bowl and take a hit. And I don't remember that. I don't really remember that. Somebody told me that that's what I did, and I was like, "Holy shit, I was really fucked up."
Confessions with John W. Kiss III.
Yeah, and Adam came home and to cigarette ash on his pillow.
I did.
But anyway, that's my little Meat Grinder confession.
More of a known fact.
Oh, by the way, Bernie, happy birthday!
Thank you, Bernie.
Yeah, happy birthday, Adam.
Welcome, Bernie.
It's I've been having a good day. Like I said, this is interview number 2 of the day.
Yeah.
So it's just been we've been having a couple drinks and just hanging out with Glendy, and now hanging out with you over the internets. So so it's been a good day. I'm gonna have dinner with some friends later, and that's that.
That sounds like a really fucking awesome birthday.
Yeah.
Hey, one Meat Grinder memory that I can throw out there to use as a segue, John.
Okay.
The first time I had you pull a bass amp into the living room, and I showed you the first written ever Cheek and the Wolf song when I was prospecting that idea to you.
Thank you, Bernie.
Yes, Yes, sir.
Yeah. So since we're segueing into Chicken the Wolves. Oh man, how do I even begin this? I mean, that's a good segue, and I'm going to get into that.
I mentioned
But I know that.
Trigalacticon
What's
when
up?
I started talking about Chicken the Wolves earlier, because that was definitely the inspiration behind starting the band.
Yes.
Besides wanting to hold on to surf rock and do something with that.
Yeah, actually, I remember you and I went into the basement at one point. This is before Chica and the Wolves, and
When it was still just an idea.
yeah, it was still just an idea. You were playing drums, and I was playing guitar, and we were jamming, and we
That's
were trying to
right,
just
yeah.
make like straight up punk songs.
Yeah, like
And,
we were trying to like emulate the sound of like Adolescence or JFA, just like real raw skate, like early '90s, late '80s skate punk.
Yeah, and we were just jamming, and we were doing that. It sounded cool, and but then nothing really came of it. And then it was, I want to say, a few months later that you came to me again with what you just said about bringing the bass amp into the living room and started showing me what you were writing and working on. Because you were like, I just want to play surf, man. And I was just like, yeah, dude, I'm feeling that. Let's do it. And you showed me a song which now happens to be Boogie Woogie, however you
Banshee.
say it. Boogie Woogie Banshee or whatever. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know the name to our own song.
Yeah, the first track on the album.
Yeah. Anyway, you showed me that, and you showed me how to play like the bass, or what direction I should go with like bass with that kind of song, and I was like, dude, this is really cool. Yes, we should totally do this. Let's fucking do surf. And we still didn't really have a name for it, and then somehow we convinced Steph.
Right, it was a meat grinder show that the Love Tunnels played at.
Yeah.
It was that show that Veracult. It was our like debut Veracult show with the new lineup, and Love Tunnels played after us, and that's when we were throwing these ideas around, and we were like, yo, Steph plays drums. Steph should definitely be a prospect for this, and so we talked to her that night.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and she, I don't know if you noticed, but she seemed like she was a little bit
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we lost him again. We'll, you there, John? I don't know. Either way, I can edit this all.
Trying not to interrupt so much.
No, it's
Hello.
Hello.
all right. We're back.
So she was uncomfortable, you were saying. She seemed to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, she seemed like she was sort of uncomfortable, but she was just like, okay, we can figure something out. And then I think it was like 2-3 weeks later, we all got together in the St. Paul building,
right,
and started jamming on some Chica and the Wolves. But we still didn't really have a name for it.
No.
And then we all kind of decided on Sex Wax. That
yeah,
was the
right. I was
first.
going to say, do you remember like the first couple names we threw out there? Sex Wax. Just
Yep.
For the listeners, that's actually a surf reference. Sex Wax is a brand of surfboard wax.
Yes, that's true. And that's why we were like, hey, maybe Sex Wax would work. But I don't even remember.
Sex Wax?
What?
Wasn't there a band already with that name?
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's why we decided to change it again. I think that's what it was. Something to that extent. There was something like that.
It was a stupid name.
And what wasn't the working title for the band when you guys were trying to just play punk stuff? Wasn't that Scaby Babies?
No, that was
Joey Lanzone and John.
Okay.
Yeah. Scaby Babies was supposed to be some weird like power violence band between Joey Lanzone and I, but nothing ever came of it. I can't remember what was the name that we had when we were doing the punk stuff potentially.
Oh, just you and me? With me on drums?
Yeah.
No, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I'm not going to remember. At least I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night tonight and, like, gasp.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, same with me.
Right.
Well, when you think of it, text me so I can put it in the, let everybody know at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
So-
pictures of us practicing, too. Somebody took pictures of us, like, doing that.
Cool. Okay, so now that's towards the end of the meat grinder.
Yeah.
Before we move on for the meat grinder totally, we touched on it some with Joey. I'm assuming you listened to the episode from what you've said.
Yes.
Do you want to add anything to what was said about some of those random side projects that happened there towards the end?
Yeah, sure. It was interesting, to say the least. It was interesting to see, towards the end of the meat grinder, there was a lot of animosity between a lot of people. But even within that hostile atmosphere, all of our friends were still getting together and trying to make something of it and make music and be happy with each other in a way. I enjoyed playing in pornographic images. That was a lot of fun. I remember one show that we played, which I think we only played like 2 shows, but one show that we played, I was just like, I want to cry during the set. I just want to cry. So the entire time I played, I was trying to force myself to cry, but I just couldn't, unfortunately. But that's the kind of music that Pornographic Images was. It was like so powerful that you could just feel, even though there wasn't really any like distinctive lyrics or anything like that, it just felt very sad,
Now, kind of along those same lines, bringing it back to Endangered Youth. What was? Tell me about that. What we thought was going to be the last show. Let's talk about that. Those last 2 shows in the meat grinder before we, quit the first time. Tell me about those.
The last 2 shows. What was the one before the last one, if you remind me?
The one before that one was Keaton and Uncle Joel's Comb, as well as Left at Home. I think they had changed the name from Malaria to Left at Home at that point. And the reason I thought of that one is because the whole Endangered Youth set, I just remember, there were tears in my eyes the whole time. The final show, if you will, I mean, I felt emotional, but it wasn't the same as what it was at the second to last show. That's just what made me think of that.
Okay, I understand. I do remember that show, the second to last show. Had a really good time at that show, if I remember now. It was, the whole show in general was really good. I mean, I'm personally not a huge fan of Keaton, but I enjoy watching other people make music. So even though I don't necessarily like their music, I love them as people, and I love that they're creating music. If they still are, I don't know if they're still together or not. But
they are. I just saw them play with the Misfits.
Okay. I remember that show, to me, was a lot of fun, and playing in that show, I do remember a lot of people that we've seen throughout the music scene coming to Endangered Youth and Meat Grinder shows were at that show, and it felt like a good family time, if you will.
Fun fact, John.
What's up?
Fun fact. A current member of Keaton was a former member of Virulent Rot. You'll have to listen to my interview on the podcast here today if you want to know more.
I'll definitely have to listen to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that second to last show was really, really powerful. I think, for me personally, though, I felt more of the impact at the last show, or what we thought was going to be the last show. There was a lot of people at that show. It felt very it felt very like, I want to say this, I really do. I want to say this without sounding cocky, but it felt really cool to hear a shit ton of people singing the lyrics to songs that we were playing. You know what I mean? It was a good time. It was a really good time, and very sad, but not at the same time, because I really think that we did it justice the way that we went out. We were just like, hey, we're breaking up. Let's have this show. Everybody comes. Good time. You know what I mean?
I'm here. You're here.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I don't know if you listened to my Loaded Words interview yet. It just went up yesterday. But I talked about this.
I have not yet.
Okay. But anyway, let's tell the world about how our friendship was saved.
Okay, yeah.
And then tell everybody, and then from there go to into us reforming and all that.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about what happened with us, then I'll talk a little bit more about Cheek and the Wolves, and then I'll get to the Reformation.
That was all kind of the Cheek and the Wolves was happening around that same time. It all kind of overlaps.
Yeah, it does. It really does. So living at the Meat Grinder and being in a band, Adam and I were living and in a band together, and we on top of that we worked at the same job, so we saw each other all the fucking time, every day, 24/7. We were pretty much sick of each other.
That's true.
What'd you say?
I just said that's true.
Yeah. So, being in a band together and all this other stuff together and seeing each other for forever, we were getting on each other's nerves. We didn't see eye to eye with some of the things that were going on with, like, ending the Meat Grinder. I wanted it to continue. Him and Steve wanted to end. And in the end, I had to move out, and the Meat Grinder was no more. So Adam and I weren't really talking to each other for a little while after the Meat Grinder was done. I mean, even Steve and I think too. We didn't talk for just a little bit. But what happened was our friend Ted Hazard was in town. He was going to play a show at Monty's Crown, and this was I don't know. I want to say 2-3 weeks after the whole end of the Meat Grinder and stuff. I come walking down to Monty's Crown, and Ted's there talking to Adam. And like as soon as like Adam and I realized that we're in the same place, which we knew was going to happen anyway, but as soon as we realized, we both kind of we're just like, meh. And then Ted Hazard was just like, no, you two need to love each other. And he grabbed both our heads and hit them together, and we were both just kind of like, Bernie, and we hugged each other. And that's how our friendship was saved from good old Ted Hazard. And as you were saying, simultaneously, I was playing in Cheek and the Wolves with Eric Glendy.
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing? And Stephanie Hellinger, is that how you say it?
Yeah, something like that.
Stephanie Ann. We'll say Stephanie Ann.
We'll go by the unofficial government Facebook name.
Basically, Cheek and the Wolves started pretty much right after Endangered Youth disband. And we were playing and practicing together for a little bit before we decided to actually play a show. Except we did do kind of like a little showcase debut at the last Meat Grinder show ever, where we were still called Sex Whack.
Yeah,
and we got some pretty positive reviews, if you will, just from that little showcase. I think we only played maybe 4 songs.
How I saw
it,
no, it was 2 songs, John. It was pretty much kind of releasing a demo. It was a sneak preview, because we felt so confident in what we were doing. It was so much fun for us already. It was like a demo that we released, but it was live. There was no...
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
and a lot of people were digging it, so we felt happy about it, And I remember when I was after Cheek and the Wolves had been a band for a little while and played a couple of shows. I remember I went on a little canoe trip with Eric Freight, and Eric Freight and I were talking and conversing a little bit about, you know, when Endangered Youth was together and stuff like that. And I remember telling him, I was like, you know, being in Cheek and the Wolves and like comparing that band to Endangered Youth, like with like relationship wise, it's a lot better. For some reason, in Cheek and the Wolves, not only did we click like 100% musically and harmoniously, but we never had any like interband drama. There was something about Cheek and the Wolves where we were just always happy to be with each other and happy to play with each other. But for some reason in Endangered Youth, as I mentioned earlier, you know, there were always little things where someone was mad at the other, kind of a thing.
In Cheek and the Wolves?
And I just remember, excuse me?
Oh, no, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Okay. And I just remember really appreciating that and just thinking to myself, like, wow, I never knew I could be in a band and actually, like, you know, not fight with the people that I'm in a band with, you know?
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. And
still sitting on that album.
Excuse me?
Still sitting on that album.
Yeah, still sitting on that album for sure. I know. I listen to that a lot, by the way.
You gotta release it, man.
I know we do. Fuck.
It's been a while.
It's been a very long while. That is true.
For the listeners, I'll say that we, in fact, do have an album as Cheek and the Wolves.
We do.
Sitting on it for so long, we have yet to release it for no reason at all.
I mean, there's some reason, you know. Steph's in Georgia, I'm in North Carolina, you're in Rochester. We got to fucking get together and do the damn thing.
Well, you know, for the listeners as well, we did in fact get one recording deal with Mike Herman.
Yes.
He recorded our album for free. He was very interested in us, and he's happy to produce it as well. We're just lazy. I mean, like, we've been sitting on it for so long. But it's going to be available, coming to a record store near you.
In 20 years. No, I'm sure we'll get that done soon enough.
Yeah, you keep dreaming, buddy.
For the listeners, don't get your hopes up too high, but Haley and I do plan to try to move to Rochester within the next 2 to 5 years, and I cannot wait, to be honest. The South is killing me. So that's all I'll say about that.
Word.
Before the interview, John just came up to town not too long ago, and they were talking about moving. So I will back him on this. It is a true statement.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back on track.
Okay.
Just so this interview isn't like 1,000 hours long. Not that I'm in a rush. I just, I'm thinking of the listener, really.
Yeah. Back on track. So, Cheek and the Wolves, and then I remember one night specifically. I think it was actually coming home from a Cheek and the Wolves practice. It was maybe like 2 or 3 in the morning. I think I was a little bit drunk, and I was about to go to sleep, and Steve and Adam called me up on my phone at the time. I've gone through so many fucking phones, so I don't even remember which phone it was. But they called me up, and they were like, "Hey, are you asleep?" And I was like, "No, I'm up. I'm good." And then they were just like, "What would you do if we told you we want to get Endangered Youth back together?" And I just immediately like popped up and was super excited, and I was like, "Let's fucking do it! That'd be fucking awesome! Let's do it!" And like we were all excited like little schoolgirls, and then Steve was like, "There's just one thing," and I was like, "What?" He's like, "We have to convince Eric Freight," and he's like, "This is what we're gonna do." He had like this big plan in his head. He's like, "Eric and I have been practicing at the vineyard space for a few months now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make him think that him and I are practicing like a regular old practice. But I'm going to have you and Adam come to the space, and we're just going to be like, surprise, we're having an endangered youth practice.
For the listeners,
and so,
this is not
and it worked. Somehow it worked. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how that happened, I guess.
Yeah, and we did some shows and played some new songs, and it was cool.
Yeah, Eric and Steve had some music they were working on, like I had said, and they just taught me and Adam all the songs, and we started playing new songs, and it was fun, and for the time that it was great. And then we had to break up again because Steve was going to grad school, and grad school started earlier than he expected it was going to start. So he was like, I got to cancel whatever shows we have and stuff like that. And that's why we broke up the second time.
Mm-hmm.
For a little while, we were dabbling with the idea of having a fill-in drummer. But all of us kind of agreed that, like, Endangered Youth is not the same without Steve, so we're not going to get the fill-in drummer.
Yeah. Now, so you're living in North Carolina now.
Yes.
As you mentioned. So how did you end up there, and what are you doing now? Let's kind of touch on that.
All right, give me 1 second. I got to check my phone battery real quick.
All right.
Okay. I think I'm good. My battery's getting low, but I should be good. North Carolina. So, Chica and the Wolves. Stephanie still right now resides in Georgia, but she had moved to Georgia to go to grad school, and she called Eric Glendy up and called me up one day and was like, hey, you guys want to play a show in Georgia this Saturday? It was like a Wednesday. And we were just like, oh, I don't know. And then, like, we kind of talked about it, and then we were like, all right, let's do it. So we went down to Georgia like the devil did.
Word. I almost made that reference. Thank you.
I thought it.
Thank you.
And we played a show as Chica and the Wolves, and it was great. Because at that point, we hadn't played a show, I want to say, in maybe like 6 to 8 months together. So it was fun to go and play a show again with them all. And then when we were done with that show, we were driving back to Rochester, and Glendy convinced us to. Us being me and Kevin, our friend Kevin, came along for the ride. Glendy convinced Kevin and I that we should make a pit stop in Asheville, North Carolina, because he had been there before, and he thought that we would think it's a cool place. So we did, and we got to Asheville later than expected. So we decided to try to find like a cool bar to hang out at and ask people if there were places to stay the night. Long story short, my now girlfriend at the time was hanging out at this bar that we were at, and I asked her and her friends if they knew a place where we can stay,
Totally
and she
on
said
a
it
whim.
was cool. What's up?
Totally on a whim. Like, I instructed you, hey, go get us a place to stay. We're drinking here tonight.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and I saw her and her friends and just went up to them randomly and was like, hey, do you guys know of a hostel or a hotel or something that we could stay at? And Haley, my girlfriend, but not yet in this story, was just like, hey, you guys could stay at my house, it's cool. And we were just like, okay, cool. And then we stayed at her house, and what's it called? We chilled at the bar with them. And then they had, like, a party that they were going to after the bar, and we went to that party. And then Haley was like, hey, me and my friend Chris here, we could get you guys a show in Asheville. And we were like, hell yeah, we want to play a show in Asheville. That'd be really cool.
Let's talk about this show.
Oh my God, let's talk about it. So it was booked, basically.
The
show was booked.
been booked.
And it was only Chica and the Wolves, but it was in a mobile home, a trailer, whatever you want to call it.
We were in a trailer park in the mountains of Asheville.
Exactly. And we played a show in a trailer park in the mountains of Asheville. We somehow convinced Steph to drive 2 hours to Asheville to play a show in a frickin' trailer.
I've never seen so many shirtless 14-year-old trailer trash girls in my life.
Oh God! And it was funny because when, as per usual with Chica and the Wolves, we were pretty much trashed before we started playing.
That's per usual.
And it was great. It was a good time. It was a lot of fun. Everyone loved it. But the cops got called 2 times, and it got shut down after 4 songs.
Hey, Caleb's here.
Caleb,
Hey, you want to talk to John? He's on the podcast.
we're on the podcast.
I don't know if he heard you.
How you doing, Bernie?
Thank you, Bernie. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing getting an interview here.
Very nice.
Hey, Bernie.
So
All right.
So where were we? You were playing the show at the
Playing
trailer
at the trailer
park, and the cops got called and all that.
Yeah, Glenn, do you wanna expand a little bit on the show? I guess.
All right. Well, let me tell you, all you listeners out here, that this show, we didn't know where we were playing. We just knew it was a house show, and as Rochesterians, we assumed that it was like a house. And we'd be
With a
playing in
basement.
the basement. Then we follow those cool cats over there, and we get to the trailer park. We're like, okay, all right, we'll do this. That was also where we were like, we didn't stay there overnight, or did we sleep there? We stayed there for most of the night at the very least. But just
we stayed there for a good portion of the night, and then we actually started to head back to Rochester after that.
No.
Because we played the house, so we stayed the night at Haley's house, and then I think it was like the next day we played that show, and then no, you're right, and then we stayed at Haley's house again, and then left.
Yeah, I took a shower in the trailer. There was no water pressure. It was a very cold shower, which I'm okay with personally, but I wouldn't recommend to any of my friends. It was an eye-opening experience, and we did play in front of a "Don't Tread on Me" flag, which I now own.
Yeah.
There's a video of a section of this show somewhere on the internet.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can get that for Adam.
I do in fact keep in contact with Ant-Man and Alex, who lived there.
Yeah, I've seen not Alex, the other guy.
Anthony?
Yeah, I've seen him around here and there.
Okay.
And I actually kind of live with Robin, the really tall guy that lives there.
Yeah, I remember Robin, for sure.
Yeah.
Good times, great oldies.
For sure. But anyway, so we played that show, and then we headed back to Rochester, and Haley and I stayed in contact, and at the time I had just lost my job with Brandon and Justin doing the home health aid stuff. So I was applying to some jobs in Rochester while working, while working some other jobs, just here and there type jobs to pick up extra cash to pay rent and stuff. And I wasn't really getting any callbacks or interviews in Rochester, so I decided to say fuck it and move to Asheville.
Word.
And that's kind of how that happened.
Let me tweak that statement. John.
Okay.
John fell in love with Haley while we were in Asheville. He came back, started packing up, and then he moved to Asheville.
Yeah, you're right.
That is pretty much how it went. I mean, we talked a little bit about that.
So you didn't you didn't care about your job. You're just like, nope, I moved to Asheville now.
Well, I did lose the job. Actually, like right when we went to Georgia, I don't know if you remember that, but that was because Brandon needed a CNA instead of a home health aide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we actually, you heard the episode with Joey and Avery. We talked about that your going away party where we did a roast and the highest Leviathan and I Can't Stop Wondering played the basement of Rust House, and that was a good time.
Oh yeah.
So now, kind of wrapping it up. What are you doing now? And so what are you doing now?
The show and the roast. That was a really nice and fun and hilarious and sad show and roast, and got really drunk and had a good time, and it was amazing being with all my friends and stuff. I really enjoyed that. I'm glad that you guys were a part of that.
Yeah. So what are you doing down there now? And any if anything you want to plug, as far as if you're doing anything musically, or if any of your friends are doing anything that you want people to check out, now is the time.
As far as musically, it's a very interesting music scene out here. It's kind of like the mountain mentality, basically. A lot of people here in the music scene are skeptical of opening up to new people. So it's been kind of hard to scratch the surface of the music scene out here. I just recently helped a band called Mormon Informant get recorded, do a recording type deal, demo, and the drummer of Mormon Informant, his name is John Fulton. He does booking at a bar called the Auditorium and another bar called the Burger Bar, but he also throws shows in his garage. I cannot remember the name of his punk house now that I think of it. I'll get that to you later today. But since I helped his band do some recording, I asked him if it's cool to be able to book some bands and stuff. So I'm hoping to start doing that kind of stuff very soon. I'm just in the process right now of getting back into school. This is my first time being in school for 7 years. I'm also going to be starting a new job. So I want to learn how to juggle between school and job before I get back into the booking game. Mm-hmm. Also, Haley just started working at a bar. It's more on the fancy side. My booking there will be somewhat limited, but I can definitely see something like Hieronymus Boggs being able to play that type of music, being able to play at that type of bar.
Nice.
So I'll be hoping to get some things coming that way as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well.
And obviously not that anyone cares. Still doing some astrophilosophy microstrand _36 stuff.
And that's a kind of strange noise project, correct?
Yeah, it's a strange noise project that was originally Steve Haramis and Ward Yurden and I, and then it's collectively had rotating members, including Adam and James Sanders, and I'm sure others.
Yeah.
Eric Freight.
I think this is the first time you've given away the that it's not actually aliens. So this is a
yeah. You're right. That is the very first time. You're right.
This is very confessional.
The word's out, everyone. It's not really aliens.
I thought he was an alien. I can't believe that was James.
Now the one other thing before we kind of close out this interview, in the interview with Glendy here.
Yeah.
We had we talked Lake Winola was mentioned, and also the name Bernie has been thrown out several times within this conversation. So let's...
Thank you, Bernie.
EYB.
Who is Bernie?
Thank you, Bernie.
And tell us about the whole Lake Winola event.
Yeah. So, going all the way back to the Where wanted to go on tour. And originally, when we first planned out the tour, it was like going to be super extensive. It was going to be fucking every day of the week for like a whole month. Like, we planned out this crazy tour, and for the whole year, we were collecting bottles and cans at Roberts Wesleyan College, digging through the trash and the recycling and getting bottles and cans. And we did that every night of the week, and once a week we would go to RIT and dig through their trash and their recycling and collect bottles and cans so that we could raise money to go on this tour. Eventually, Ward Yurden was like, I can't do it every day. No, we can't do this. So he was like, we can't do the tour at all. And we were like, no, we have to do the tour. Like, we already agreed to this. And he was just like, all right, well, let's change it around. So we came to the agreement of making it every weekend for 1 month. I think it was the month of July or something like that in 2008, 2007, 2008, one of those years. And so we changed it dramatically to just every weekend in the month of July, and most of the shows were in Pennsylvania. We had one in Brooklyn, like I said, several in Pennsylvania, and I don't even think we had any in Rochester. And I know there was like one other place, I just can't remember where it was. But anyway, on this tour, one of our stops was the Blue Pelican in Lake Winola, Pennsylvania. And our history would change forever at Lake Winola, Pennsylvania, because that is where we met Francesco, the owner of the Blue Pelican. We played the show there. We were told to stop playing after 4 songs, 3 songs, something like that. And this owner of the bar, he talked like this. He was like, how you gentlemen doing? My name's Francesco. This is the Blue Pelican in Lake Winola, Pennsylvania. This is a very established bar. And we were just kind of like interviewing him and asking him questions. And
Hillary Clinton's brothers drink there.
Yeah, he kept name-dropping his own bar. And he was just like, he was trying to like advertise his bar. He was just like, the Blue Pelican in Lake Winola, Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton's brothers come here and drink every day. They're here. You'll see them. This is the Blue Pelican. And while he was answering some of his questions, there was just this random, I guess, obscure person that walked by him and handed him a piece of paper. I'm assuming it was a piece of paper that had some sort of note on it for him. And he took the piece of paper, he turned around, and he was like, yeah, thank you, Bernie. Thank you, Bernie. So when Steve and I were done with this tour and decided to make a movie from this tour, from all the stuff that we recorded, when we were editing the movie, we probably heard this guy say, thank you, Bernie, 500,000 times from editing. So after a while, we started calling the movie Bernie. And we started saying, oh, we got to edit the Bernie, and we got to do the Bernie. And then we started calling each other Bernie. And then we started saying, thank you, Bernie, all the time. And it just turned into this huge fucking thing. And there are a lot of people that are friends with us in our friend group who know and call each other Bernie. Some people know the story, and some people don't even know why they call each other Bernie. But that's the whole Bernie story. Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Bernie.
CYB.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the conversation with John W. Kiss. As you probably figured out, it was recorded the same day I recorded the interview with Glendy, because Glendy was still here hanging out. It was my birthday. I had a lot of fun hanging out with those guys. It was a lot of fun. Now, the band that those guys, well, not the band, but the name that they were using before Sex Wax and Chica and the Wolves, that name was the Meatless Spines. If anybody cares, I'm sure nobody does, but we were talking about it, so I just wanted to let you all know that that's what it is. Also, the name of the house venue in Asheville that John said he would give you the name of is the Porta-John. So if you're listening from Asheville, check out shows at the Porta-John. It sounds like it's a cool place. So yeah, I mean, in the show notes, I'm going to put a long list of the bands that were mentioned. There were a whole lot in this episode. If you're curious, check out some of those bands. A lot of them are local bands from here in Rochester, or some of them from Pennsylvania. Really, I just want to promote my friends that are doing cool stuff, as I've said. So next week, if you tune in, or not tune in, but you know what I mean, I'm going to be talking to Mackenzie Harris. She's played music under the name Rosehip, and we talk about her musical history, and we talk about some political things, and just talk about what it's like to be a woman in the scene. So I think it's a really cool, fun conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to start talking to some people who are a little bit less connected to my own story. I am really tired of talking about endangered youth and the meat grinder and projects that I'm connected with. It seems like we've been doing a lot of that on these last couple episodes. So I'm sure we'll come back and talk to some close friends of mine again. But we're going to take a break and talk to some other people who are from other places or involved in other things. Yeah, so also, throughout this episode, you heard Antithesis with Cowards and Cockfights. Then you heard The Where with the Pterodactyl Ate My Homework. And then you heard an unreleased track by Endangered Youth called Hungry for Gluttony that was live at Talavera. It's a YouTube video. You can find it if you're interested. It was one of the songs that we never actually recorded. And the working title for that song, well, not even working title, we called it this even when we were playing it a lot, was Hungry for Glendy. So Glendy's been a friend and connected to that band for a long time. But I think that's pretty much everything I've got to say right now. So, check out the other Podcast of Pennsylvania shows. Like Podcast of Pennsylvania on Facebook if you haven't already. Like So I've Been Told on Facebook. Just share the love. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase Damian Abraham. He does this at the end of his podcast, but I just want to encourage you all that this isn't that hard. You guys can be doing stuff like this too. So be creative. Start a podcast. Start a band. Write a screenplay. Just do something. Do something creative. Alright. Have a good day, guys. See you next week.